So there are some really common herbs that you're going to find at the grocery store. They're all very different, so it's important to know what they are and what they do and how they taste. So one thing that's really important to know about herbs is one, how they smell. So this is sage. It's got kind of a flat leaf. It's kind of fuzzy. It's not like hairy fuzzy, but it's definitely got like an interesting texture. Now, if you tear the leaf and smell it, it smells very sweet, but also kind of like camphorous, and that's me. It's kind of like a menthol flavor, right? It's very like effervescent in your nose. And it tastes a lot like it smells. Like sage is one of those really obvious herbs that you put it in food, and people know that there's sage in it. And the same goes for basil. Basil is another flat leaf herb, and if you pull a leaf off of basil and you smell it, basil is very distinct. It's got almost a minty, savory smell. And again, basil tastes a lot like it smells. Anybody who's ever had like basil on their pizza knows what that looks like or tastes like. This is thyme. Thyme it's got these little tiny leaves on the branches, and when you pinch them to bruise and you smell, it smells very woody, and it smells very, very sweet. It's got like a sort of floral smell to it. And it tastes just like it smells. It has sort of like a sweet floral thing without actually adding like sugary sweetness. This is rosemary, and you can see it's got like, again, the little branches off the main stem. So if you pull it off and you tear it in half and you smell it, it smells very piney. Again, a little sweet like the thyme, but definitely its own thing. The thing to be aware of when using rosemary, especially if you're using like dried rosemary, these little leaves are pretty stiff. They can cook up, they can stay hard even though they cook up. And so sometimes they can create a textural problem. Like, I don't know if you've ever put like dried rosemary in a dish. Like, it's basically like putting little wooden splinters in your food. So if you're using like dried rosemary, it makes sense to maybe put them in a little cheesecloth bag so you can fish them out, because somebody's eating those, they can actually get stuck in your gums and it hurts pretty bad. This guy is tarragon. And some people might not be so familiar with tarragon. It's a French herb. It's actually a classical French herb, and it's delightful. It goes very well with fish. It's got these very delicate little green leaves, but it's got an interesting flavor. So if you smell it, it smells very like anisey, like anise seed or like licorice. And it has a lot of that flavor, but if you bite it, it's very, very much like anise. So if you're not into like the licorice flavoring or fennel or anise flavoring, you might not like it, but it's also got like a beautiful green note to it, and even a little bit of bitterness. And actually, tarragon can be really strong. So if people are sensitive to licorice or anise flavor, you don't want to feed this to them because it can be really overpowering. Now we've got parsley. Parsley is everybody's favorite herb, or at least it's the most common herb. Parsley doesn't really smell like anything. It just smells like green. But if you pick off a piece of parsley and taste it, it's got almost like a peppery green thing. It tastes fresh. It tastes alive. Like, parsley doesn't have a ton of flavor on its own. It has a flavor when you eat it like by itself. But if you add it to other foods, what it does is it gives it like a missing green note that it might have otherwise lacked. It gives it a freshness. It's like, parsley is so popular because it just tastes natural. It makes foods taste like they have a natural edge to them. You can't really get it in any other herb. And now for my favorite herb. I love these. I grow these in my garden. These are chives. And chives are great because they give you onion flavor without being overpowering. They smell like onions. So you smell them, you get that like nice oniony smell. But if you bite them, they taste like onions without being obnoxious. Like, onions, raw onions are super strong and overpowering, and they can actually mess up your stomach in some cases. Chives don't really do that. So because you can eat these raw, you can just sprinkle them over like scrambled eggs or over fish, over a baked potato. They're amazing. You get an amazing amount of this like green oniony flavor without it being overpowering. And these are actually the easiest way to add flavor to your dish without like requiring a lot of work. So these are your basic herbs. These are the ones you're going to run into most often at the grocery store. Learn them, know them, and love them. These are going to be like the bulk of your herb arsenal. And if you know how to use these herbs, it'll get you really far in your cooking. So the first step in chopping herbs is learning how to remove them from their stems. And every herb's a little different. So here we've got sage. This is pretty simple. We're just going to pull off the leaf, and that's it. That's all it is. You don't want to pull off the stem and have it still stuck to the leaf because it's kind of a woody stem. So if you pull it off like this, like you can't really eat this. It's not very palatable. So generally you just want to pull off the leaf and toss the stem. Basil is very similar. You've got like simple basil leaves. What you do is you just pull the leaf off, boop, right there. You don't want a big long stem. And as basil grows and matures, like the leaves get really big and you'll have a long stem here. You want to rip off that stem just because it doesn't really add any flavor. It's not a huge deal, but it also doesn't look great on your plate. Then you just stack them like this, and that's how you chop them. Now you've got thyme. Thyme is an interesting little herb. So some people will pick the leaves off one by one, and you can certainly do that, but that is pretty freaking tedious. Like, look at that. So another way to peel thyme off of the stem is to get a single stem like that. You hold it at the top end, the very top. You can see these little end leaves here, and you pinch and you pull very gently. Ta-da! So that's much easier, isn't it? And you can actually go through a ton of thyme very quickly that way. See? Like that's way faster than the other way. And you can actually do something similar with rosemary. Like you can pull off the leaves one at a time. Rosemary is a lot faster because you can grab a handful of leaves. Right there. But if you have like a particularly tender, like this is actually a nice fresh rosemary sprig, so you can actually just hold it on the end and pull it similarly, and then there's all your leaves. You get all these like little woody bits here, and you just pop them off and throw them away. And so all that's left is like the best little leaves. Tarragon's super simple. These leaves are just really frilly and delicate, so you just grab a handful, yank them off, put them down on your thing. Parsley's similar to tarragon. Like you get these big, beautiful leaves, and you just pull them off right at the base right there. Parsley stems aren't that big a deal. They're actually very flavorful. And so a lot of people just pull them off here and then chop everything together. It's not a huge deal, but if you're pulling off the individual leaves, you might as well take the extra effort to just pull off at the base of the leaf and discard the stem. It's not necessary. And you just keep doing that until you are free of leaves on your stem. Chives, well, they're already done. Like chives are really easy. Like they usually, you buy them and they're in this condition and you just literally stack them up and you chop them. But next what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to actually chop these herbs so you can use them.